Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our author series today. And joining me in studio right now is Claire LaZebnik. She's an author. She's a mom. She's an activist. And as she was just telling me about a moment ago, a few years back, if you said that she would become a community activist and involved in politics, she would say me. But that's Claire. The Simpsons music. She's also married to Rob LaZebnik. He is the co-executive producer and writer of The Simpsons. So we've got a lot to talk about. I also know you because Claire is a mom at the school that our kids went to, and both of our sons are very friendly in the theater department.
That's right.
So we've got a lot in common.
Yes.
But you've written quite a book. Quite a lot. You've written 12 books, 2 of them that you've co-authored.
That's correct.
You've written an anthology play. You've done a lot.
Contributed to, yeah.
You've contributed to an anthology play. You've done quite a bit. So let's start a little bit with your latest book.
Okay.
Things I Should Have Known. There's a lot of things I should have known, Claire. So tell me a little bit about Things I Should Have Known and how you got into writing this book.
This book is maybe the most personal to me in a lot of ways because even though it's my 12th, as you mentioned, it's a YA book. It is aimed at teenagers, although I know a lot of adults who have read it and enjoyed it. And it's personal because I have a son who is on the autistic spectrum and I have a son who's gay, and I managed to sort of pull from my experiences in both categories to create a character who is actually both autistic and, we'll say queer, to leave it a little bit open.
Well, let me ask you this, because it's always tough when you're raising kids, right? And you go to school and you're kind of supposed to fit into that little box in school. I like to call it the one-room schoolhouse. And, if you're a quiet kid, you're brought into the classroom saying your kid doesn't talk enough. And I would always be very defensive and say, do we all have to be extroverts? If we're living in a world of everyone being an extrovert, what's that going to sound like? Why do we always have to fit in the box? When your autistic child, when he was, he or she?
He.
When he was younger, did you think, geez, I don't know? Or was it the teachers who brought you in and said your son isn't relating? I don't know. How did that go? It's very difficult as a parent.
We had a very classic journey in that he just didn't learn to talk. So he had the real verbal lag that sort of the more, it's one of the classic ways autism can present itself. And it does allow you to notice it earlier than for some of the kids who you don't really notice until they should be socializing and they're not. So we needed to start speech therapy when he was about 2.5. And once that happened, it was easy to sort of then discover what was going on and then work on it. But I couldn't agree with you more about what you're saying.
The one-room schoolhouse, very difficult.
Yeah, and one of my great regrets actually is that I think we pushed him harder to be like other kids than I wish we had. There was a lot of, we were told to try to move him in that direction. And now I kind of think, no, if I were to be a new parent all over again, I think I would encourage my kids more to be themselves.
Things I should have known. I really get that because my middle child is a quieter one. And I would sort of throw him into sports. And he's like, well, I don't really like this. I'm like, oh, but you might. Not knowing what I'm doing, right?
Absolutely.
And the first one as well, who's more of a theater kid. It's like, oh, you'll have a good time throwing a ball. They hated it.
Right,
but you just, you're supposed to socialize them according to what they tell you to do. And if I only had known... but I think a lot of people still try and fit in because they don't know any better. I think parents are trying to do their best.
And you're very insecure as a parent, especially with your first couple.
Oh, absolutely.
And you think, you're supposed to turn out some kind of standard citizen. That's sort of the goal. And I was just telling someone a story about trying to drop my son off at a day camp when he was pretty little. This was my second son, who was very withdrawn at that age, very shy. And he was clinging to me and crying, and nobody was helping us. And I finally thought, why am I doing this? And I bundled him up and took him home. And I wish I had that thought more often of, why am I doing this? We're happy at home. We're happy together. When the time comes to take the next step, he will take it, which turned out to be true. Look, all my kids went happily, all but one is leaving in the fall, but happily off to college, and we're really comfortable in college. So those early years,
well, I would always tell my kids, when you finally get to college, they're like, I'm in 3rd grade.
Right.
But when you finally get to college, you will find your own people.
Exactly.
But how do you tell a little kid that? And that's true, right?
But
hopefully it chose your school well if it's college, and you do end up finding your people. But it takes a long time to get there.
Right.
And personally, I'm a big advocate of the public school systems. We did not go through that here in LA, I will tell you. We did do private. Because at least you have a wide spectrum of kids to choose from. You've got the rich and the poor. You've got the kids that are considered not as bright, but I don't believe that either. But you know what I'm saying.
Right.
Just a wider spectrum in which to sort of try and fit in, right?
Yeah.
So if we only had known. But you're right. The kids go off to college and they find out who they are. You know?
They do. And I think that's something to remember during the early years. And that if your child needs to be with you more and to have more quiet time and not to be out on the field throwing a ball, they're not going to suffer from that long term. That's just what other kids are doing at that age. Your kid doesn't have to do it. But no one told me that. So
nobody told me either.
agony.
And you also have to be careful the school that you're in, because sometimes maybe they will push you to a certain direction when in fact that's not where they should be going. So this is a great book to read because of that.
And that's part, again, talking about why that book was personal to me, is that I'm a great believer that diversity enriches. And
it sure does.
One of the things I learned in writing the autism books is that classes that include kids on the spectrum, all the kids do better overall.
Overcoming Autism is the book you're talking about.
Yes, that's the first
one.
That
you co-wrote with Dr. Lynn Kegel.
Yes, who's a phenomenal
two books on
clinician.
autism that you co-wrote with her.
Yes.
This is terrific.
This one is for about younger kids. The other one is called Growing Up on the Spectrum. It's for teenagers and young adults. And I'm very, very proud of these books. I think they're aimed at parents, not clinicians, so you can just read them and instantly just
footnote
know how to
it.
interact.
And footnote it.
Footnote,
and
mark
just say,
it.
okay, so that makes sense to me. I like it because it's really conversational.
Yes.
And it's mom to mom, parent to parent. It really is.
And
with a doctor's take as well.
Right. So basically, Dr. Kegel tells you what you should do, and then I come along and say, okay, I know I was supposed to do that. I never did it for these reasons. I'm very honest about the things where, I didn't carry through with her recommendations and all that.
But somebody else will benefit from what you've learned.
Exactly. I hope
Read
so.
it. I mean, it does matter. Even for those of us who do not have autistic children, there's such a spectrum, including the friends that they bring home. And you know how a lot of times parents will go, "Ooh, what's going on there?" I mean, I was never one of those people, but it happens. And read about other kids, read about other people and how they live. As you mentioned, also diversity.
Exactly. And what I was going to say is that one of the studies that Dr. Kegel quotes in this book is that the kids overall do better in a class with a lot of learning diversity and, spectrum diversity, because a teacher learns to pitch the lessons to everyone and to alter and change and not just assume everyone learns the same way. And when the teacher does that, all the kids benefit. And I feel
firmly believe in
right?
that. I really do.
Diversity enriches, and I feel that way about community too.
Speaking of community, what's going on, let's talk a little bit about some of the activism. I need to read, what I love is reading, I call them your little mini blogs that you put on Facebook all the time. May I read one or two of these?
Absolutely.
This just came out about 2 hours ago. How about we rename Independence Day, Please Take Us Back, England, and Rule Over Us Again Day? I love that. They're just fun. I love reading these.
Thank you.
Yet another one. This is from yesterday. Over the last year or so, my cocktail hour has moved from 5 o'clock to 4:30. If the current political climate continues, I'll be enjoying a Manhattan with my breakfast by 2020. It's so true. It's so true. What the hell is going on out there?
I don't know. I know that it's not all of my posts are that lighthearted. I also have a lot.
But
that
I'll tell
are
you
more
what,
serious.
Keeping it lighthearted is great, because I think it really spurs the interest of a lot of people just to be thinking. I mean, people have been so intense lately with their political blogs, and sometimes I'm just like, no.
And you're no good to anyone if you're driving yourself insane. There has to be a certain level of continuing to live life. I have a weekly resistance group where we get together.
May I?
Of course.
I would love to join in.
Monday mornings at my house.
I always say to everyone, I am absolutely not a Republican, not really a Democrat. I am sensible, because I firmly believe both sides have just completely lost their way, particularly the current administration. I have to say, I didn't vote for him, certainly, but and I was saying to you, I really am struggling with friends. I'm maintaining my friendships and family ties, but it's getting harder, don't you think?
Well, I would say one of the biggest problems is the us versus them mentality, and I think this administration has really encouraged it. It's not a question of what do you think of this issue? How do you feel about this? I mean, I think any sane person would say small children should not be separated from their parents and put in cages. I honestly think if you take away the us versus them side of it, I think you're just going to get sanity. But the problem is if you're feeling like they're on this side, we're on this side, and we have to maintain our side, it becomes like a soccer match.
Well, because I was talking to someone about it just the other night at the dinner table. We had quite a few people over, and one friend said, well, I'll show you the pictures from the Obama administration, that this is what was happening under him. I said, that may or even may not be true, because I don't believe anyone, by the way, nowadays. I don't.
Right.
I really don't. Because there's so much propaganda and, may I say, just bullshit coming out from all sides. If that's even the case, put an end to it. You know what I mean?
It doesn't
If it
matter
started
when
under
it
Bill
started,
Clinton,
just stop
put
it.
an end to it. Just
Yeah.
put an end to it. No more finger pointing. Put an end to it.
Exactly.
That's it.
I'm with you.
I understand we cannot assimilate every single human being who comes over the border. I get it. At least I think so. Because then it really is getting to be a very difficult way to navigate it financially. How do you do that? Education, insurances. It is tough. But there has to be a humane way of handling it.
It's all about humanity.
So-
I completely agree.
And then when you get into politics, there tends to not really, the human part goes out the window. I know that
Exactly.
firsthand because very recently I was dealing with some folks in Washington over California dividing into 3 states. And I was curious about it because I was doing some work on it and learning about it. And then I thought, I'm not sure if this is really a genuine idea to make things better or a way to maybe make people's pockets a little deeper. And
Yeah.
when it's in Washington, that's why I trust no sides. So
Yeah. Well, it's wise to
you got to question everybody.
Yeah.
Not, and especially your own side. I really believe that. If you just align with your own
Yes.
side, that's how stuff gets through. I question everybody.
I think that's.
I'd love to come if I could come. and
Okay,
join them.
well,
They'll probably
I'll
throw
give
me
you more
out.
info.
But anyway, sorry. More about you. So you do this group. Tell me about it. You say you get together on Mondays.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about the group is that we started off as a phone banking group to make calls about the things we were upset about or to,
that
ask
must
for
go
this
on
and that.
all day nowadays.
It does. But the reason why we got together was because none of us liked making phone calls. And then we gradually realized none of us liked getting phone calls. And then gradually we have evolved into a postcard group is the short version of the story. So now we write postcards and talk while we're writing postcards.
Oh,
so
I like that.
It's much more, we're still doing what we want to do, but phoning never worked. I'm not a phoner.
I'm not
As
a
you may have
phoner at all.
You may have discovered trying
I'm
to
a texter.
reach me.
I'm a texter. But
too.
I needed 5 or 10 minutes with you, just a little bit.
No, I know.
A little
that was a
quickie little
pre-interview. But it's hard to reach me by phone because I don't answer it easily, quickly.
I don't either. So that we have that in common as well. So politically, you're motivated. You've written all
Yes.
these books. What do you like to write? Because like I said, you've got 5 young adult novels. You have 5 books for adults that you've written. I want to point out another one that I love this. I did not read this one.
Yeah,
but
that's
I
my
want to.
most recent adult novel, which is still quite a few years ago because I've been writing YA for
Yeah.
the last good hunk of time.
But I love the title. Families and other non-returnable gifts. Oh, wouldn't we just love to return so many people in our families? What a great, great title. Tell me about this one.
There's also someone gets a tattoo as a present, a tattoo of his girlfriend, which is another. So originally the title was Families, Tattoos, and Other Non-Returnable Gifts, and then we shortened it because that was getting a little too long.
Really?
But yeah,
I like that, actually.
I liked it too.
That says a lot when you say tattoos, because some people love them, some people hate them, and it really brings up a lot with people, right?
Yeah. This was my Boston book, which was fun because all my other novels have been set in, well, not all, but almost all have been set in L.A. or at least on the West Coast.
And we should bring up you grew up in Newton, Massachusetts.
Exactly.
Went to Harvard, by the way.
And so I have a real grounding in the Boston area. You can hear it in the way I say Boston.
Boston.
Boston. And so this, it felt it was a little more about, and it's about families and how nutty families can be and how you still are very much a part of them.
It is so true. When are families nuttiest? Is it during the holidays, you think? I'm
I think
starting
it's
to
when
wonder.
you rub against them the most.
Well, probably because
so,
when you
yeah.
see each other the most,
Yeah.
right? And all the little things that bugged you when you were a kid are coming out, but it's almost like it's on steroids because it's even more pronounced,
One of the things I talk about, I have a little essay in it. I talk about how we all think we're the same member of our family. That we always
Right,
look
you
around and
morph back into who you were?
Well, no, just that as you go through the world and then you come back and see your family, you're like, oh, I'm the one sane member. Everyone else in my family's a little bit crazy, but somehow I escaped it.
Yeah, but in
and I'm
my
sane.
case, it's true.
Well, see, we all think it.
I'm just thinking, I'm being
I
silly.
think everyone believes
I think
it.
everybody's got a little nut in them, is what I
Yes,
think.
well,
And if
there's
everybody
that.
comes to the table saying, yeah, then maybe it's a little better, right?
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my book to just sort of enjoy that truth.
What
about
was your
life.
background like growing up in Newton, Massachusetts? You're one of how many?
5 kids.
Oh.
I'm the youngest. I have a brother and then 3 older sisters. And
Do you all get along?
we do. We it's funny because we were all very intellectual, all very very suburban.
Well, Newton, Massachusetts. They're a great place to grow up.
My sister, actually, my middle sister, just wrote a book, a memoir, and in it she talks about her childhood a little bit. And it was funny because when it was reviewed in the New York Times, and they said something about this neurotic Jewish family, and we were all like, she didn't say anything about being neurotic in the book.
But that's what the author got out of it.
Yeah,
right?
I think any large Jewish family.
The interviewer got out of it.
The reviewer,
yeah.
I think, just saw a large Jewish family and went instantly to neurotic. I don't
Well,
think
that's not
they were
really
particularly-
right. Because if it wasn't written that way, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Hey, it's like, wait a minute, we're not all neurotic.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, so I thought that was funny.
where did you meet your husband, Rob? Because you've got some. I mean, how many years has he been writer and co-exec producer?
Co-executive producer now.
That's huge.
It's one oddly and very hard question for me to answer because he was on The Simpsons a very long time ago for like a year or 2 years, left for a little while, and then came back. So I never quite know how to count the years.
But in total, it's pretty
We'll
much.
say it's been for most. So my son,
Wow.
who's 18. He can't really remember time when
he wasn't on
when
The
his
Simpsons.
father wasn't a
That's
Simpsons
such a
writer.
huge thing, especially when you go to school. They're like, you walk into parent meetings. You're like, he works on The Simpsons. You know how that goes.
Yeah,
It's
we went to a back-to-school
oh.
night once where a teacher made a Simpsons reference, not realizing that
she didn't
that there was
realize
that there was a Simpsons writer in the room and was slightly embarrassed at the. But it was fine. It was just funny. But
Oh, that's really
everyone
funny.
was sort of whispering.
And from what I understand, he has fashioned Marge after you from time to time, right? Tell me about this because I love this story. Please, you'll
Yeah,
love it.
well, I don't know. Marge is definitely way more saint-like than I am, but
Oh, I don't know. I think she's a little devilish underneath. I'm sorry.
I like to think so.
I'd like to talk to him about Marge.
I would like Marge to be a little more devilish myself. I think she's a little too long-suffering. No, but what happened was a number of years ago, I can't remember how many now, he and I were talking, and I just said, I'm so tired of dyeing my hair brown because I went gray very young. And I am really thinking of just letting it grow out and go in gray. And he said,
no.
Please don't. And I have to say,
And Rob's a super cool guy. He is.
he's the
super
sweetest
cool,
husband,
really
never
chill,
makes
great
any
husband.
demands.
No.
Whatever I want is fine. He's not like
But the gray
that.
hair may be pushing it here.
But he just
tell
said,
us why.
I'd rather you didn't, sort of wincing and sort of saying, it is aging for both of us, essentially, was that, and in Hollywood, you don't want to look too old. And, it was all those kinds of things. And, I got it.
Should have
I
dyed it
understood
blue like Marge.
Well, I did for a while. There are photos of me with blue hair.
Do we have any photos of her with blue hair?
I don't think I sent
Go
any.
scrolling over her Facebook.
But
It's
the
got to be
important,
something.
you have, can people see that already?
Yeah, people
the
can see
photo of
that.
Marge.
There's
So
you as Marge.
Marge is me. So then he wrote an episode in which Marge and Homer have pretty much the exact same conversation.
Hysterical.
And Homer sort of says, "Okay, dear, whatever you want, dear." And Marge goes ahead and lets her hair go gray. And over the course of the episode, she becomes more and more, for very complicated reasons, more and more witch-like. Till at the end, she looks like this, and she's carrying a broom, and she's sort of terrifying.
Really? Did you say to your husband, "Is that how you look at me? The
That's
witch
exactly
with the
what
gray
I
hair?"
said to him. I said, "When you finally base a character on me, and
I'm
that's
a
what she
witch."
looks like." Yeah. So the power of that kept me brown-haired for another 5 years, and then just
It worked.
recently I just lost it. And
Well, it's a real
decided-
pain, isn't it? I mean, not that I would know, but
keep up.
it's very difficult keeping your hair a certain color.
Oh my
It's-
God! It
it's
was
got to be very
constant.
freeing. I have
and
to
as
say.
you can see, I was really gray, so it was the roots were constant.
It's beautiful.
Anyway, this is who I am.
It's beautiful.
is
More
me.
people should be brave and just let their hair go. I'm not one of them at the moment, so.
The other night, well, there are a couple of other small Simpsons stories. One is that they actually did an episode about YA authors, and they show a shelf of YA books, and my book appears on the shelf as do you can. It's not a great shot. You can barely see my book, but many of the
But
other
he
books.
puts it in. Yeah.
It's in there, and many of the other books are written by. There are a lot of Simpsons wives who are book authors.
Isn't that interesting?
Like Monica Holloway and Miley Malloy, and there are several others. So they got a lot of their titles in there, which is really fun. It's just a weird coincidence.
The Simpsons are a real family. I mean, the actors, the writers, correct? I mean, they must be a part of your family as well, right?
been a long, long time, and there is a little bit of that. People talk about the Harvard Lampoon mafia aspect.
Absolutely.
My husband was on the Harvard Lampoon, so he does know a lot of them from college, or some of them from college. And and you were asking me how I met him. We went to college together, but did not know each other there, which is sort of funny. We overlapped at college for 3 years,
That's
never met each
interesting.
other. We have figured out since then that we had a class together, did not meet during it.
You were
But
preoccupied with someone else, I'm sure.
I think we both were, yes.
Yeah.
But we met out here in LA after college.
As writers, how did you meet?
We met through my sister, actually, who mutual. She met him through a mutual friend. She was dating someone who knew him, and then said he should get in touch with me, and he did. I was dating someone else at the time, wasn't interested in dating anyone, so we just started hanging out as friends. And
What was he doing at the time? And you?
I was preparing to go to graduate school in English, where I lasted for 3 weeks at USC. I
Why?
dropped out after 3 weeks.
It was just a pain going back to school and
Yeah,
the
wasn't-
confines of school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think once you've been out and you're doing your own work and suddenly you have to do it within a certain storyline, that's tough, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just wasn't ready to sit and listen to someone.
I did that with journalism. I was
yeah?
also an English literature major, and I was going to go on to Columbia because they had a master's program in journalism, along with getting a law degree. And I thought, wait a minute, a lot of these people who got a master's in journalism, they're doing what I'm doing because I started out in print. So I didn't do it either. So
Yeah,
I ended up okay. So,
yeah, I
think
found
once
that
you've been
my
out
way.
for a year or two, it's very hard to go back.
I think so. And ironically, I think that switches again. I think when you've been out for like 30 years, or over 30 years, like me, the idea of sitting and learning something seems really fun in a way that it
Training your memory again.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could even do it.
well, online at least. I'm actually going to, tonight, I'm taking my first drawing class ever at
Online,
SMC.
or are you taking it?
I'm doing Santa Monica Community College.
Okay,
They're-
for those of us who live in the west side of Los Angeles, Santa Monica Community College has some of the greatest courses out there. Terrific
amazing.
professors.
They're
I mean,
such a
I'm
good
also a big
community resource.
proponent of community colleges as well.
Me too.
My children did not go through the community college system, but we have some really good ones here and in most communities. So I always say check it out because it's a good entree into college.
Yep.
Anyway, so you're taking your first.
Yeah, it's my first drawing class. I've always wanted to be able to draw, and I
That's
just
neat. You
thought,
can
why not
illustrate
try?
your own stuff.
I would love to be able to do that.
Right?
Write a graphic
What's your
novel someday.
interest in drawing? I mean,
In
are you doing
drawing?
nudes? I mean, what are you doing?
God, no, not at my age. I wouldn't want to.
I don't think I could do
see
that.
anyone-
It's like,
yeah.
oh, no, please. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it just
No, the
depend.
human body doesn't interest me anymore. Really like graphic novel kinds of stuff, ultimately.
Yeah.
Or even just doing art just drawing, just to relax, take my mind off of
Well,
everything.
Okay. I did that a couple years ago, and I went to like a nice little art school, and they had me, do the still life with peaches. It was tough, and they said you have to do still life with
Yeah.
peaches before you continue on. I dropped out. I just didn't want to do peaches for a few
Yeah,
months.
I'd rather
I
do
wasn't-
people, I think.
People, not peaches, but I think you have to do peaches before people.
I'll find out.
You
I
let me. Will
will.
you promise
Yeah.
to let me know?
I will.
So clearly, you're a creative person. Your whole life, what were you like as a little kid? The youngest of 5.
Oh, I was always in a corner reading, completely
Really?
antisocial.
I was in
yeah.
a corner making trouble.
Good for you. I wish I had had more of that in me, because I'm finding that I do want to make trouble now a little bit, and I don't come to it naturally. I'm a peacemaker. I'm a let's all get along kind of person.
No, I am too. I
yeah.
do not like fighting. I was just a noisy kid, so I ended up in athletics, which is where I belonged, because to keep me quiet and centered, I needed to focus on movement.
What sports did you play?
I was a competitive figure skater, and I also swam, and that's why, like last year or two, I just did a few marathons and finished them. L.A., New York, and a half in Hollywood.
I'm
and
so
then
impressed by
I'm
that.
impressed too, but now my knees are blown out. I just tore my meniscus a week ago,
And do you know that that's related to training
yeah,
for the
I
marathon?
think I just
Yeah.
did way too much, too soon, too much, and I think also from years of just being an athlete as a kid, it blew out. I mean, I'm limping in here, and I got to do something about it. But so that was my thing when I was a kid.
Yeah,
so you're in
yeah.
the corner reading.
I was in a corner reading, eating and reading. That,
Eating and reading.
All my pages. I went through a phase where I loved pomegranates, and so I have all these old books from my childhood that are just covered with these little
that's so
pink
cute.
fingerprints. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And that's why I ended up writing, because there was really nothing else that I knew how to do.
Yeah, you used to write short stories as a kid on my dad's IBM Selectric that was always sitting on the dining room table. I love that. It was
Remember
very,
when that was the height of technology, by the way, the IBM
the
Selectric? It
IBM
was just
Selectric.
like,
I was
oh my
only
God.
2, but they
Those were so cool.
they were really cool. I just felt like I was, like the man, just sitting there writing on my dad's computer. But so I would do it, but I never quite finished it. I just would put it aside. Which is why I like to talk about, very briefly, people who want to write a book or people who have an interest in doing it. How do you focus yourself? And perhaps you think your ideas aren't good. What do you suggest to people? What do you do?
I think my biggest tip is don't listen to the voice in your head that's going to tell you this isn't good enough. About
true.
every
About
sentence.
anything, really.
Yes. I happen to know that voice better through writing than anything else, but it will tell you that every single sentence that you write. It will say it's not good enough, it's not going in the direction you wanted to, what you had, when you were first thinking of this was so much better than what you're actually putting down. It will tell you that at every single step of the way. And what you have to learn to do is just keep saying thank you. I'm going to just keep going. I'll come back later, and you need to be quiet for
do
the
you
moment.
do an outline? Let's say you have 15 or so chapters in mind and you try and plug in your ideas, or how do you go about it?
I have no set way of doing anything.
You don't?
And no, I've written differently for every book I've written, and I haven't written recently because I've been, since the election, I've been doing so many other volunteer things and community things. So I've kind of forgotten how to write. I would love to get back to doing it. So
I think you will.
I think I need
Maybe
someone
something
to teach me how to
political,
write.
politically motivated.
It
right?
may have to be a little bit like angry at this point, but yeah.
The Angry Novel
The
by
Angry Novel.
Claire LaZebnik
The angry middle-aged woman's novel.
with the gray hair. In the Key of Love. Tell me a little bit about
I did want to
this.
mention that. This is one of the volunteer things that I've started doing, and I've loved this organization so much. I'm now on staff there. It's called POPS. POPS, the club, and we bring in lunch to local public high schools, and now they're actually starting chapters in other states like New York, and the students whose lives have been impacted by incarceration. They could have a parent in prison. They could have a parent who's been deported. They could have a best friend who's in prison. They themselves could have been arrested. It doesn't matter. They don't have to tell us even. They can if they want to. They don't have to. They show up for lunch, and we provide a safe space to sit and talk. We have fun.
I love that. So
and
where
they
do you do
blossom.
it, and how do you pick the schools that you work with?
I am lucky enough to volunteer at Santa Monica High and Culver City High at the moment, both of which are just wonderful, wonderful schools with wonderful students. These students are so great. I can't begin to tell you. And as my own kids are leaving the house, my youngest is going
you
off
have
to
4
college.
children, yeah.
Yeah, I get
and your
to have
youngest
time
off
with,
to school.
I
Is
get
she
to have
staying
time
in
with high schoolers.
California or taking off?
My youngest is going to New York. So
All of yours went east, right?
all but my daughter, who's up north in Portland. But the 3 boys have all gone east. And the 2 oldest ones graduated from college, came back to L.A. So I'm hoping that
Mine did
continues.
too. I did not think he'd come back because he loves New York, even though he went to school in Boston.
Right.
And I thought he was going to end up in New York, but he moved back here with his friends, and they've got a house. They're already starting to get to work, and I thought,
that's
kind of cool. I didn't say anything. I had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Because if I did, he would have ended up in New York.
I know.
So-
You can't push too hard. You just
No.
have to hope.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. I've really enjoyed talking with
Me
you.
too.
I so appreciate you taking the time to come down here to the Sunset Gower Studios. And for anyone who wants to find this show, we're on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio app, or Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We're sort of everywhere. So you can listen, you can watch, and people can find your books how?
Oh, well,
Amazon.
Amazon is the easiest way. They're all on there. But some of them, the paperback of Things I Should Have Known just came out, so that should be in most stores too.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up for you is?
I'm still trying to decide. Like I
Yeah.
said, I've been very busy. I'm doing a lot of volunteering stuff now. So,
That's wonderful.
yeah.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thanks for tuning in to Deborah Kobylt Live, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.